$3 billion investment we make. Were there not an Israel, the United States of America would have to invent an Israel to protect her interest in the region. The United States would have to go out and invent an Israel.
A thought had crossed my mind that maybe the UK and the US are deliberately trying to destroy Israel. Now, why do I say this? It would make sense when you take into consideration the stranglehold Israel has over the US and the UK, even Germany. I'm sure these three countries are tired of the influence the Jewish lobby has over their politics. And maybe sabotage is the tool these three countries are using to deal with this problem, by encouraging Israel to commit genocide. The question is, what does Israel have over these three countries that elicit this so-called unshakable and disturbing loyalty towards Israel? Well, 1, the Germans still owe the Jews for what happened to them in World War II, a debt they will be paying for a long time. 2, Jewish people feel that the US didn't defend them during World War II, and now the US government suffer with a guilt complex forced on them by AIPAC, the Jewish lobby. 3, the Brits alongside the rest of Europe refused to take the Jews into their countries as refugees after fleeing Germany during World War II, and now suffer a guilt trip over it because of the Balfour Declaration they had signed back in 1917. I guess in that moment, the Brits were looking like a bunch of traitors to the Jews. Okay. Those are the circumstances that explain these three countries' inability to put Israel straight on the catastrophe they are causing in the Middle East. So what's so special about that, you may be asking? The US, UK, and Germany have done far worse to other peoples of the earth and never go to such lengths for them. I'm sure these three countries owe black people a lot more than what they owe to the Jews, yet they refuse to give reparations to black people and continue to exploit Africa to this day. So why are the Jews being given such consideration, especially when you take into account the hundreds of atrocities that have happened to black people and people of color around the world at the hands of these same three countries? So what makes the Jews so special? Is it because they are white people? Maybe. I would think what makes them special is their money. The second part of this equation is that how many groups out there are rich enough to buy favor with a government? In this case, it was the UK who agreed to the Balfour Declaration on November 2nd, 1917. It was a statement of British support for the establishment in Palestine of a national home for the Jewish people. It was made in a letter from Arthur James Balfour, the British Foreign Secretary, to Lionel Walter Rothschild, 2nd Baron Rothschild, who was a Zionist Jew. Now, how many groups of people on the planet have that much influence over a government where such requests are granted so easily with one stroke of the pen? Not even rich people, only the wealthy has this much influence. The Brits had no right to give another set of people from Europe someone else's country, wealthy or not. They had no right to do something like that, but they did it anyway. Look at the mess they've caused. In 2024, the Palestinians are still paying the price. You would find some white people would try to gaslight black people and people of color that those days are over, move on, forget about it, it's in the past. Is it really? The Jews are very wealthy people and have members among them that have channeled huge sums of money, along with their hate for the whole world except for Zionist Jews, into the political and financial systems of the United States, the United Kingdom, Germany, and France. It is this group of people who control the politics of these four countries and the rest of Europe. And like well-trained predators, this group of individuals have managed to gain control of the individual politicians themselves through lobbying. I can see how this could become an annoyance and a danger to each country. Maybe this is why these three countries are encouraging Israel to take a self-destructive stance. It's like when you was at school, there would be boys that didn't really like you, but would become your best friend when they hear you're going to get beat up by the school bully after school. They would encourage you to fight the bully, telling you not to worry because they have your back. And they would give you all the encouragement you needed to commit playground suicide, knowing that you was going to get your ass handed to you on a silver platter. So you take your beating like a man and go home to lick your wounds. The next day at school, those same people who you thought was on your side would be the very same people to laugh at you and call you stupid for listening to them. I feel the US and their allies are doing the same thing to Israel. But what would be their motive? Maybe policies that are good for the people are being blocked by the Jewish lobby, and now their interference has become untenable because it is destroying the country. Well, let's just take a look at the state of these three countries that are heavily invested in Israel, shall we? The German economy has totally collapsed, so much that the country is deindustrializing. This is similar to the events that brought Hitler into the fold. He blamed the Jews for the collapse of their economy, and now the Germans are sacrificing their economy to support the Jews. You can't make this shit up. The US economy is in ruins because the Jews control the Federal Reserve Bank. The Jews and their non-Jewish friends have hoarded all the wealth in the US. The UK economy is also in ruins because it can no longer benefit from colonialism or neo-colonialism. The British are the chief colonizers of the world who make everything legal when it comes to colonization. The British Empire created their own laws which govern their own stolen territories. Families like the Rothschilds shaped policies in these three countries for the last 100 years, and you thought that colonization was over. No, it just changed form. But this way of making money is coming to an end. The Europeans cannot exist without some form of slavery. It's what put them on top. They understood that oppression would get them what they want. And what they want right now, so it seems to me anyway, is to break that financial stranglehold the Israel lobby has over them. Why else would you encourage Israel to commit political suicide if you didn't want them to become a pariah state? Did you think that centuries of making money using the tools of slavery and oppression was just going to go away? I think not. They just developed smarter and more covert ways of implementing slavery and different ways of oppression. I believe it's now called neo-colonialism, which is why the US, the UK, and Germany, including France, back oppressive regimes across the world. You can turn on your TV and see the leaders of these Western countries blatantly lie to the audience, so they can create the next pretext for their next liberty-taking policy. It's so obvious, it's embarrassing to say the least. What you see playing out before your very eyes on your screens is scary, and a clear example of a tyrannical government running amok, which shows that the people have no control over the people they have elected to take care of their affairs. This is the pretext to tyranny and the creation of a dystopian society. This requires serious action from the people. Your name and your funds are being used to declare war on the nations that are wealthy in resources. And now these chickens are now finally coming home to roost. The issue with the West and their insatiable appetite for other countries' resources is a topic for another time. How the US does its business has shown the whole world that it is the US that is a major threat to world peace and stability. And now, most of the other countries outside of the West, including some countries in Europe, now acknowledge this to be true. Hence the creation of the BRICS nations. We all have heard out of the horses' mouths that the US, the UK, France, and Germany say with their full chests that they are supporting Israel no matter what. I can only assume hoping it will cause Israel to become a pariah state. That's the only thing that makes sense at this point. Or maybe what we're all seeing is just pure arrogance and stupidity by a bunch of modern-day politicians who still think they are great and powerful like back in the day. There's nothing more dangerous than a delusional government who can't keep up with what used to be other poorer nations. Maybe that's what we're dealing with. It's a perverse way of looking at this situation. But if you know psychopaths like I do, then you will recognize the mindset and how they think. In the face of the whole world telling these politicians they are the ones that are wrong, they choose to double down in our faces as if the rest of us are insignificant. They say this is chess, not checkers. So I am viewing this through those eyes. And I cannot believe that these well-educated and experienced politicians are making these crazy decisions to support Israel without applying some logic to it. I just can't believe that this behavior from these politicians is without some kind of careful thought behind it. Otherwise, what we are witnessing is nothing short of pure evil. So I have to believe that these countries and their leaders are supporting Israel simply because they want to destroy Israel by encouraging Israel itself to destroy its own image before the entire world. One thing I know about the European is that they do not like to be held over a barrel, and the Jews have them hooked on their finances. The European believes that they are the superior race. I'm not one of those believers, fortunately, but they believe that shit anyway, so I can't see this so-called superior race being a lapdog to whom it once considered to be people of a lesser race that would make no sense unless there was a hidden motive behind it? Or has the apple fallen so far from its colonial roots, it no longer sees itself as superior, but instead has become a prostitute who sells its wares to the highest bidder? So why is the American president so hardcore in his support for the Zionist Jews? Well, let me fill you guys in on that one. Okay, so what is Project Israel? Again, it has everything to do with resources. The US are oil thieves mainly. They go around the world stealing many things, but oil is their thing. They have spilled a lot of innocent blood trying to acquire and secure these resources. They have been causing much trouble in the Middle East, and have done for over 100 years for the sole purpose of enriching themselves. Not even for their own people. Hence why the Middle East dislikes the West so much. Unfortunately for them, the Arab nations are no pushover, and at many turns in their efforts to gain control of these resources, the US Army had to make many U-turns in order to save their skin. So for many years, the US government would strategize on how to gain control of the Middle East. That has always been their goal. Their efforts only brought anger and resentment towards them from those countries that felt the destructive hand of the US government. This is where Israel enters the political realm with force. The US basically needed to have a foothold within the Middle East. Its military bases wasn't enough. So what better way to achieve this aim, but by being best friends with the enemy of your enemy, who just so happen to need what you have to offer, which is financial aid, high-tech weapons, and a way around international law. It was a match made in hell, especially for the Palestinian people. In the end, the US got their proxy, and Israel is now able to bully all its resource-rich neighbors, which they have been doing for the last 14 years. Most people are not even aware that Israel is an extension of the US. It's the best military project ever dreamt up by the US government. It's the US's very own country in the Middle East. It is an external state. That was the whole reason behind the success of the Balfour Declaration. Israel is not a state that can survive as it is without US support, which includes financial aid and the US military. This is why the support for this country is a mandate that all presidents must accept, and those who go against this mandate tend to have very short political careers or are never re-elected again into office. Those countries that choose to fight back are labeled terrorist states and are then demonized through Western media in order to gain support for a pretext for war. Again, the media is also controlled by the Zionists too. Pointing out the hypocrisy of the West has become a pointless task, because I believe that it has become common knowledge, not through word of mouth, but by examples we see every day on our screens. You may be asking, so what can we do about it? Well, grow a pair of balls for starters. That would be a good place to start. Your governments are always declaring policies in your name, telling the rest of its nation that it's what the people want. Meanwhile, the people haven't a clue until it's too late. When you hear the debates held in each country's respective parliaments, you often hear this phrase, the people, followed by some rhetoric that removes more and more rights away from the general public in an attempt at driving home some policy they are trying to push through parliament, whilst at the same time knowing that the general public mean nothing to them, but just a means to get to power. So they sing your songs, dance to your tunes, and kiss your babies, and come up short every time when it's time to deliver for the general public. That's because the people are the political parties, not the general public. Look, there's only so much cake you can eat before it makes you sick. The European has had his belly filled beyond measure, and now, after 500 years of scoffing his belly full at the expense of others, it is finally making him sick. This sickness has gone beyond throwing up, but has now become a mental sickness. Such is the problem we're facing with our politicians. We all heard it from the horse's mouth, that the US, the UK, Germany, and even France say with their full chest that they will support Israel no matter what. I believe, hoping, it will cause Israel to become a pariah state. They say this is chess, not checkers. So I'm viewing this through those eyes, and I cannot believe that these well-educated and experienced politicians are making these crazy decisions to support Israel without applying some logic to it. I just can't believe that this behavior from these politicians is without some kind of careful thought behind it. Otherwise, what we are witnessing is even more dangerous than we could possibly comprehend. So, I have to believe that these countries and their leaders are supporting Israel simply because they want to destroy Israel. Simply because they can no longer afford Israel, and this is their way out. So they have to make it look good because the Zionists are watching them like hawks. The downside to their plan is that they all have to pretend to support Israel in front of their nations at the expense of their own political reputations. I think Project Israel is being terminated because it no longer serves the interests of the US, but has become a financial burden they can no longer afford. One thing I know about the European is that they do not like to be held over a barrel. The European believes that they are the superior race, so it doesn't make sense to have the superior race playing lapdog to a people who were once considered a lesser race than them. That makes no sense. I believe the Jews that call themselves Zionists are a group that needs dealing with and fast. The normal Jews are okay. Most of them are cool people, unless they believe they are the people of the book, of course. I also believe that you, the people, have a lot of work to do. The people have become politically lazy, and it is this laziness that has allowed your politicians to become compromised and allowed to run amok with your tax money. This is a white people problem. Black folks can't help you with this one. We too busy sorting out Africa. Sorry. But still, feel free to share your thoughts in the comments section below. And if you found this analysis insightful, don't forget to hit the subscribe button. This is Channel Zero, the channel that brings a brutal but honest perspective on current affairs. So stay informed, stay engaged, and be a part of the conversation. Thanks for watching.